So the funny thing about writing books about preaching and releasing books in the 21st century is that my book, Simplify the Message, Multiply the Impact, was released on February the 4th, 2020, which if you know anything about the calendar and anything about time, that was not a good time to be releasing a book, because only about 5 weeks later, everything shut down, pandemic hit, events stopped, the world seemed to stop rotating on its axis. And so in the time since that book was released, I've noticed so many things about how to notice things. And one of the main things that I've noticed that I think will help preachers during the pandemic era is the degree to which we all share a new common language. Just think of all the phrases that we share in common, sometimes making fun of them, deservedly so. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, masked, unmasked, getting tested, testing positive. We used to think testing positive was something good, now it's something really bad. And so in terms of noticing what to preach on, since this book came out, a whole new lexicon has emerged, a whole new common vocabulary that I think the preacher paying attention will be able to jump on and use those phrases, use those terms, hopefully in a way that's not polarizing, but unifying, as a way of, haven't we all lived through this stuff? One of the things that I really liken preaching preparation to is being a Sherlock Holmes. And what does Sherlock Holmes do? He takes a magnifying glass to the routine things of life and he notices all the connection. He collects the dots so that he can connect the dots. And that's what good preachers do. We're always on the lookout. We're always holding that magnifying glass up to what happens in life. And as you do that in your own noticing, just realize there's some pretty good noticers who have come before you, like, I don't know, Jesus. Think of what he used in his everyday teaching and preaching. A farmer went out to sow. A man had 2 sons. 2 men went out to build their homes, one on the rock and one on the sand. He was always noticing the everyday stuff of life and using that as the raw material out of which he would craft his sermons. And for you and for me, the privilege, not the burden, the privilege is precisely the same, that we notice the everyday stuff of life, the family drama that comes into your counseling room, the funny thing that happened at the grocery store, the witty thing someone did online, the sad thing that you saw someone else post online. All of that is raw material for you to put together as you craft your preaching life. When we think of great ancient sayings or great modern sayings, I sort of don't restrict myself to the era. If I hear something good, if I see something good, sometimes even if I think of something good, I'll go write it down, and that's going to preach. One of my very favorites in recent years is from Pastor Kyle Idleman, who's up in Louisville, Kentucky, just a masterful speaker and author, and he crafted a saying one time that Jesus is punished for everything we did wrong, and we're rewarded for everything he did right. And that's the gospel. Tell me that doesn't preach. Jesus is punished for everything we did wrong. We're rewarded for everything he did right, and he did everything right. And that is the gospel. So I invite you to keep, if you use that kind of bottom line that you get from someone else, make sure you at least say, it's like I heard a pastor say one time, or in that case, as Pastor Kyle Idleman said, well, we've been, at our church, we've been putting a lot of these sort of bottom lines together, punchy, quick sayings as it relates to marriage, because we just have a passion at our church. And here's one of them. We realize People spend way too much time and energy and money on a pretty wedding, and barely any time and energy and money on a beautiful marriage. And so we've actually started the beautiful marriage movement, which realizes that, man, it is so much better to prevent crises than to manage them. It's the kind of movement where you realize that you got to prepare yourself before you promise yourself, that people don't have marriage problems. They got problems. You got his problems and her problems, and they get married, and marriage doesn't solve those problems. Hello, it magnifies them. And all of this just helps us to realize that kind of the discipline that you need as you prepare for marriage, especially for singles again. And the realization, this is what I'm going to share with our church soon, is that discipline is painful, but regret is permanent. Discipline's painful, but regret is permanent. So choose discipline every time. And that's a principle, actually, that will apply to how you get your sermons ready.